Hello, hello, can you guys hear me? Mm, all right. Hello, all right. So, how are we all doing? Have we been able to walk through what we practiced last night, the last class and the class before? So, once again, our focus today, since today is the last class, is to walk us through everything. So sorry for that. Is to walk us through what we've been learning so far with Node.js and React, JavaScript as a whole. So I will try and go through the code base one more time. Or before I even start, I need to understand that you guys have been working on something. You guys have been practicing what we implement in the last class. What challenges are you guys facing? Are you guys having any issue, whether with the code or with the database connection or the general understanding of how everything works together? Um, if you have any questions, you guys can drop the question. I think we can prepare our mind for the next 20 minutes or 30 minutes to answer questions because that's what today's class is all about. I need to understand that you guys is here. You guys can hear me. Any question? You guys need to be very interactive with this class. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. I'm waiting to get feedback from you guys. I'm waiting to get feedback. All right. So let me show. Let me preview the code for us. Okay. On deliver your results. What do you mean the results? Is it that you're unable to create the database? Have you been able to create a database? Okay. Let me show us what deliver again and walk us through how to do set it up. When you launch your dbeaver, on the right side, you can see an icon, plus icon that instructs you to create a new connection. You select the engine you want to, type of database you want to create, MySQL database. Okay, you mean you're unable to create the table. Okay, so if you're unable to create the table, this is how you are going to write the script for it. So when you're connected to a database on it, let me show you how to do that. So this is a data in MySQL database over here, and the database bootcamp database. So you can navigate it down to preview all the tables on the database you created. So now, is it that you write a query to create it, or you want to use the UI to create it? Because When you're using this type of tools, you have access to create the table, writing query, or using the GUI provided for you to do all those things. But if you choose to create the table using SQL, all you need to do is right click on the table you want to write the query for, on database you want to write the query for, write a new script like this, and start writing your query to create a table. Create table, your table name. Insert your table name, test table. Then you provide all the necessary columns you need in the table. You want to add your ID, your integer, not null, then followed by the pattern of the name. So it's very easy. So when you write the query, then you can run the query like this to execute it. Mm, okay, so you put the alias. So this is the format. Just follow the pattern of creating the table. All right. So do we all have any other question? Someone said they can't install Beekeeper. We'll walk us through. Okay, let me show us one more time. Beekeeper is another tool you can use to do anything you want to do. I don't know why this MySQL this is showing error for us. We're unable to do this. Anyway, someone said they can't install Beekeeper. Let me show us how to do that. Just come to Google, type download Beekeeper Studio. You can have access to it. Okay, the beaver will expire. No, it will not expire. Just follow the instruction and download the community part. I'm also using Beekeeper and it has been telling me it's expire, but you just have to do the necessary to probably pay for it or subscribe to it. Either one. Okay, so these are the issues on the infrastructures. Do I have any issue on the code level itself? Let me walk us through the code. Do we have any issue setting up the code environment, connecting it to the database? If you don't use Beekeeper, you can use if you don't want to pay for Beekeeper, you can use dbeaver. You can use Workbench. These are the alternatives you can use. You can download Workbench. They all perform the same thing. You can download Workbench. You can download Workbench. This is another alternative. You can download Workbench. All right. So, are we having any issue on the code? I mean, general questions. What we've been teaching ourselves for this while. I mean, across JavaScript, React, Node. Let me show some of the slides. Is it, if you have any questions on React, I can walk us through React now. I still have some of the code we implement on React over here. So You can still run it, test some of the implementation. Okay, how do you still remember all these things? Do you still remember? Yeah, this is the code right here. The code, and do you still remember all the code for to perform and achieve all these React implementation? Okay, okay, okay. I should the code we implemented yesterday. All right. Another person said we have MySQL issue with MySQL connecting to the app. All right. Okay. I think now we have a direction of what we can walk through today. All right. Someone said that we don't have the issue you have is that you can't get the command. What command? Is it the database command to create a database? All right. So let me show us the code, the backend implementation we did yesterday. All right. So can you all see my screen perfectly? Can you all see the screen? Can you all see the screen? It's much not to let the code. So I try as much not to separate the code into separate files so we can all understand the functions step by step. So now I'm going to walk us through it right now from how to set it up. So when you want to set up a React, a Node application, you need Express framework, and you want to use Express framework. Do we still remember the package to initialize the package.json? It needs npm init -y. This will initialize an empty package.json file for us. With this command, can you guys see my screen? npm init-y. It will initialize a package.json empty package.json file for us. So when you're done initializing the package.json file, you now need to go ahead and install all the necessary libraries you need for your application. And if you guys can understand, when we are building this system, when we are building this API, I only install the package upon when I actually need it. We install bcrypt.js for, okay, all right. So we install bcrypt.js for our data encryption. We install Express for the API development. That's what we use our API development. The Express framework is a lightweight node framework that handles the request routing of the system for us. Also, we install JSON Web Token library to generate token, the token we use to authenticate our API. We use it to protect some of our API. Then we use this MySQL library to handle our database connection. So now, before you can install all this framework, all this library, you need to have an understanding of how it works, how you can actually use it. If you want to use it, all you need to do is just come to Google, npm install any library you want to install, npm install bcrypt.js. The moment you enter this, it will take us to the package.json website where you have access to thousands and millions of libraries for development. Now, this is bcrypt.js documentation. You need to read it, go through it. It will explain how you can set it up, how you can actually incorporate it into your code base, details on the performance, and how you can use it. Now, this is an overview of how the BOOTCAMP works. Then we also implement JSON Web Token. All you need to do is just search it and you get the documentation for it. How to install it, npm install JSON Web Token. Then the details on how it actually works, how you can use it. And if you guys remember, yesterday, when we are trying to implementing the token expiry, when we are testing it, this is where I find out, I read it to understand that when you want to pass seconds or days, this is how the command works. For 10 hours, I read the documentation and understand that, oh, on the expiry payload, you understand how you can pass data to it. So you read documentation to understand how you can interact with the library. All right, so, and for the MySQL, this is the MySQL. So you can see it's a lightweight framework, MySQL client for Node.js. It's focused on performance and request statements for us. So we can use this. This is what we use for our database connection. We now create a new file, index.js. So this file is what we use to interact and generate our API development. We initialize all the things we need, all the libraries we need, both Express, MySQL, BigCrypt, and JSON Web Token. We start the server over here, then set up all the middleware to allow the app to be able to work. Then I explained this that this is what we use to pass data as a JSON so that when we are sending the JSON object, the system will be able to understand data and pass it to JSON. Set up a port we want to actually run. We want to run on port 3000. Then this is an explanation on how middleware works. We actually define and write our own middleware ourselves. We need to understand something over here. This is a middleware. This is a middleware. This middleware over here is it's a predefined middleware that has been written into Express. This is another middleware we design ourselves. The same way this thing works is a function that is being executed. We can also abstract our own function too into a middleware that is going to work the same way this is working. That is how we implement it over here. Can we? I want to show us where is the authentication auth check middleware. Can we see that? So understand how middleware works. We can also do that as a whole to abstract this into a middleware by just doing this. By writing this over here, let me show us const date logger middleware. So it's going since it's going to be a middleware, this is how we define it. Then what do we actually want to perform? We want to log the date inside it. All right, so let's run on port 4000 because we are running the front end on port 3000. Now this date logger, we're expecting to we are expected to inject it into the app the same way all this app reducing is working. So all we need to do is just do this app, call the date middleware, and execute it because it's a function. So now if I start the server and run it, npm start. So the server is running on port 4000. Now let's run it to see that it's actually running. To get, let's try and log in. Where is it get to log in? Um, okay, this is where I'm making a mistake. All right, so when we run it again, why is our system not working? Fall for not found. Oh, oh my god. I'm running on port 4000 and the request is serving on port 3000. Let me stop the front end application that is running on that port. Okay, so let me stop this port. This one is running on port 3000, the front end. So you can now come back and stop the server, revert the ports back to 3000. Okay. I actually want to show us how this works very well. Okay. Now I can now start the server back. Try and run it again. Try to log in. Can we see that this is logging? We, we convert the date logger into a middleware. And this right here, we are setting up app middleware on startup because the execution for the app is that can we see the code is executing from top to bottom. Now we define the port, we instantiate the app, we define the port, we set up a middleware, date logger. This are the where we are setting up the middleware. We convert our date logger to middleware to follow the same pattern as this thing. Now you can understand that this app express.json it follows the implementation of how middleware works in Express and Node.js. So now you can now have an understanding and overview of how this app.json actually works underneath. Middleware follow the pattern to work on how middleware work. App.json is a function that is executed. This parenthesis in front of it lets you understand that it's a function that is being executed. The same thing goes for this URL encoded. Is a function that is being executed inside your middleware. You are injecting it into app.express to understand that you are setting up all these middleware. So now for you to understand how these two things work, that's why I did this for us to understand how this actually works. Now, we have the application already run and understand the middleware injection. We define a new route for us. The route is to show us that the app is running. When I start the server now, npm start. localhost 3000. Can we see that the app is running? Localhost 3000 on default route, which is slash, should return this for us. After that, we define, okay, let me move everything that is not routes to the top. Okay, so now we define, after we set up the first route, we define another route called route to delete the API. The route to delete the API are set to the parameter for the route to delete the URL parameters. Then we define in another middleware to protect this route. Now the question now is, what do we have inside this auth check? What we have inside the auth check is at the top, because I move it back to top. What we have inside auth check is just a simple implementation that we are extracting token from the request, validating the token if the token actually exists in the request header. We are now verifying the token using the JWT we introduced, we required in the file. Then the token, that is the data that is being sent in the request header, followed by the key we are using to generate the token and also validate the token. Now, one thing we need to understand is that the key we are using for generation and verifying need to match. So that is why I define it as a constant to hold the secrets. Can we see that? I define it as a constant to hold the secrets. It's just a random auto-generated random alphanumeric word. But in the recent, if you are building a new system, you can you can follow a pattern to generate it and keep it, but you don't store it inside your code. You put it, you define .env file to hold all the secret data for application. So something like this, we're going to put it as a separate file. Then we are now going to follow the pattern to do this, to inject it into the application process.env dot the name token secrets. This is the standard pattern and the standard way of separating sensitive information from the actual code. Right now, if anybody get us a hold of this code, they will not understand what the value the key holds until they actually check the env. So now let's revert it to how we have it. The token secret key is what we use to verify the token that is being sent inside the header of the application. Over here, I explained yesterday, it will only show this invalid authentication if the token has already expired or they send an invalid token, that is, token that did not match the pattern of the JWT token that is being generated for us. After that, we now need to verify the user that tried to log in, that tried to access the data we are protecting. Do you actually have access to access this data? We made a database connection. So how are we doing that? So we define a function. Is at the top. It's a simple function DB connection using the MySQL we import at the top. MySQL dot create connection. The pattern is how this is the pattern on how to create a connection, connect to database. So you can use this to connect to your MySQL database that you've already set up. You understand that the MySQL is running on your PC. You set up the user for it, assign the password to the user, and create the database. Over here, if the database is not set up, this function will throw an error that database connection is invalid, database connection failed. So we are still in the process of explaining the authentication check, that is the middleware that is protecting the API. So now, after we successfully made the connection to the database, this is where our database knowledge comes in. You want to interact with the database, that is, you need to write the query for it. Are we there? Can you guys hear what I'm saying? I need to understand that you guys were here. I need you guys to let me know if you guys can hear me, or I should recap, or I should continue. All right. Somebody just asked what is the function of a middleware. All right. So, like I explained the other time, middleware is just a, like it said, middle. It's in the middle. That the is the execute is the process that executed after the request has been processed. Can you see what we have there? The pattern is that when a request comes into your server, let me show us how it works. Right? Can we see this? See this URL? When the request comes into the server, it's in the middle. That is middleware. What this thing actually executes, this middleware, you need to execute the response. So you can define a lot of a lot of you can define a lot of middleware that handles different operations. You can define a middleware the way we define it to handle authentication. You can define a middleware to pass data, that is to convert data that is being sent to the server, which is the functions of this first middleware. You can define a middleware to always log data on every request that is being sent. You can define a middleware that every time a user tries to access their system, always notify you, send an email to you. You can define a middleware that is just putting a middleware that set up a thing that will always be in an intermediary. I'm trying to find the perfect word to use. That is the intermediary between the final execution. That's what middleware is. So, all right. So another person asked that, does it mean that front end and back end must run on the same port? No, front end and back end cannot run on the same ports. Port is an identity for every service. A single service should have a single identity. Port is just like an ID. You are running a front end, it is being run on port 3000. Your backend also run on port. You try to run the service on the same port, it will definitely notify you that another service is currently using that port. Let us try it. So if I try to run, okay, this is running on for 3,000. The backend service is running on for 3,000. So if I try to spin up the front end service, let us see what's going to tell us. It's going to tell us that 3,000 has already been occupied. CD2. All right. So if I now try to npm start, it's going to tell us that the service, see, can you see that something is already running on port 3,000? Do you see that? So now, but React is smart enough to tell us that should I run it on another port instead? Yes. So it's now to generate a new port to run it. So that's it. You can see you cannot have two services running on the same port. See, it's now running on port 3001. Okay, so all right. Um, okay, somebody said I can't connect my SQL to my app, and another person asked the similar question: how will I link my database to Node.js? So that's what I'm explaining here. So for you to be able to connect your app to the SQL, also for you to be able to link your database to your Node.js application, what you need to set up MySQL, install MySQL library for you to that will enable you to connect to database. When you install it, you need to instantiate it over here. We are instantiating it. Then create a connection. That is, you want to set up a connection to test. I mean, when you install Workbench and you also install what's it called, Beekeeper or any other database connection tools, you need to actually connect to it before you can access it. So it's the same thing we are doing over here. Instantiate a connection to your database inside your code. When you're using Beekeeper, you are going to put in the credentials. When you're using Workbench, you are going to put in the credentials. If this database, if I put in wrong database over here, database X, there is no database with database X. If I try to test my application, it's going to throw an error. Okay, I need to stop it and run it again. Okay, so if I try to run it again, it must throw an error because there is no database with that value. Can we see that? Can we see that? Unknown database X. You need to make a connection to the database before you can actually use it. So install MySQL, create the connection, pass in all the database parameter. When you do that, you can now use that connection to fetch data from the database. Connect, write your query, your preferred query, and perform any operation you want to perform. If you still don't understand this, you can come to npm. You can Google npm install MySQL. So to take you directly to the documentation on how you can set it up. All right. So can we all see that? It's the same thing. Okay. Let's continue our code walkthrough. So after the authentication check, after the authentication check, another another request, satisfy the request. The second operation is the middleware check, and the third operation is the response, where we are expressing our response, the actual things we want to perform on the API. So now this API is going to delete an employee with the ID that we pass. We are extracting the ID from the request parameter over here. Request parameter. I explained to us in the last class that we can extract data from request body when you post data to the database to the server. You are extracting data from request body. You can also extract data from the request parameter. When you have a request like this is parameter ID /ID. Any request that you see that comes with slash is called parameter on the request. The last one, I explained that you can extract data from the header, request header, which is what we are doing inside the auth check request header. Also, you can extract data from all of us. I believe you have experience with this type of request, whereby you can see requests like this: question mark, name equals test, and age equals 5. So when you come across any request that is like this, it is called request query. So something like that, you can do const name comma age. You want to extract that from the request does query. So those are the methods you can use to extract data from your request, from header, from request parameter, from request query, and from request body. All right. So now I think a lot of people are actually having issue with MySQL installation. Let me walk us through the code. I think that I'm almost done with the API and with the code walkthrough. I will show us how to actually set it up. So now you now write the query to delete data from the database. So this query over here, replace this ID with the ID you pass from the request. So if you copy this query and run it inside our MySQL, the same action that the query will give us, the same result, when you run it on your database tools, the same results you will get from this code execution. Oh yeah, we're now success message after this execution is successful. So now we will notice that this API is a protected API. That is that when you want to execute this API, you need to pass your token to it. The same thing goes for API to get all employee. You need to actually log in. When you log in, you pass the token to the request every time you want to execute this request. So we're expecting this data, this API, to return all employee data for us. So when the API reach get employee, we are still instantiating the connection to the database, write the query to fetch the data, and return it to the employee and return it on the response. Now, the last API, which is a post API, that is, we want to post data to create an employee for us. That is, this data we are sending to this API, we want to save it. We actually want to save it. Let me show us how we are sending that. This is how we are sending it. You define your request, set the header, and send the data as a JSON object to the request. Now, when this data reach this request, we are extracting all the data we sent. This line of code is actually extracting the data from the request. Now, we can also implement a validation to always check if those data actually match or exist on what we need. Data validation. So what are the checks you can do? If the data actually exists and match what we're expecting, that is data and type match. So you can check. Let's assume you want to check for name and age. So you need to check if, and we want the name the user is sending to be string. We are not expecting to send name and send number. So we can also do that validation by just doing and the type of name equals string. So when any user try to send data the name data that does not match this validation check, it will fail. Or maybe the name did not exist in this request. This will fail. Let us try that. Name does not exist, or invalid name. So it's either, so I'm trying to handle the same operation, two operation with one check and returning it as an error. So if this name did not, the check for this name did not pass, our execution will stop. Let us try and implement and test our data validation. So I will try and run the API. I will not send name as part of the data. If I try to run this, no, not supposed to work. Mm. Oh, not a question. Yes. All right. Let me check it again. Because the body is not supposed to work. Because that's body. All right. So if I try it again, run it. Can we see that name does not exist, or name or invalid name? That is that the data we are sending to database, the name needs to exist. So now if you actually send name, that doesn't you actually send name, but the name you send is not string. You now send something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like this. That's also an invalid name. So if you run the request again, it's not a string. Oh, I I remember that it will always, any data that is sent will always be string to the request. But all right, so that's just part of the things we can do on the request. You can always perform a data validation check. Now, another thing we are doing after the validation check is that we are encrypting the password. So how are we encrypting the password? We are using bcrypt to encrypt the password. So to understand how bcrypt is installed and how bcrypt is being used, we can also check the npm for that, which is what I explained earlier. So bcrypt, All right, so we check bcrypt to understand how it works and how we can use it. Can you guys hear me? Hello, can you guys hear me? So, so sorry for that. I have an internet connection error. So, the same way we go through the documentation for bcrypt, the same thing we did for JSON and other library we're using. So you read the documentation, understand how the bcrypt works, then actually implement it. So we are passing the raw password the user sent. We're encrypting the password. Now, this encrypted password is what we are saving in database. So we need to write the query to actually save the data. So the query follows insert into table name, the columns we want to put the data, then we define the value. We want to insert name into name, position into position, age into age, salary into salary, username into username, and the encrypted password to the password, not this password, the plain password that is being sent to us. All right. So when we save this, we execute the query and we return data, we return success message. So now we are going to go on a break. When we are back, we are going to continue from this.
Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Do you know that over 60% Africans lack basic digital skills and over 4 billion people in the world lack access to internet? And this has been a major obstacle in economic growth, social inclusion. Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Do you know that Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Do you know that over 60% Africans lack basic Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Do you know that over 60% Africans lack basic digital skills and over 4 billion people in the world lack access to internet? And this has been a major obstacle in economic growth, social inclusion, and education. And this has held a lot of people back from reaching their full potential. This is where digital literacy advocacy comes in. We are on a mission to empower individuals in digital skills and positioning them well in this fourth industrial revolution. This is me inviting you to join our team of digital literacy ambassadors, changing the narrative and bringing this into reality. Imagine the impact you could have made by helping just one person gain a digital skill. By doing that, you would help the person income by 10% and a prospect for employment by 25%. As an ambassador, you would help the person to become much more inclined and understand the importance of technology, enhancing this world that we are. Are you ready to make a difference? Join us as a tech ambassador to create a digitally empowered society. Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Do you know that over 60% Africans lack Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives? Do you know that over 60% Africans lack basic digital skills and over 4 billion people in the world lack access to internet? And this has been a major obstacle in economic growth, social inclusion, and education. And this has held a lot of people back from reaching their full potential. This is where digital literacy advocacy comes in. We are on a mission to empower individuals in digital skills and positioning them well in this fourth industrial revolution. Have you ever wondered how digital skills can change lives?
Hello, hello. Can you guys hear me now? We are back now. All right. Can you guys hear me perfectly? Hello, can you guys hear me? Are you guys there? We need a feedback. Are you guys here? I can't get any feedback from you guys. All right. So let's get back to the code explanation. So the last part of the code, okay, which is an API to log in the user. So API to log in the user starts from here. We define the API parts, the parts of the URL, the parts employee/login. Then we guys can see that there is no check over here because this API is a public API. It's not protected. You don't have to be logged in. It's not. You don't have to be authenticated to access it. So that's why the middleware check is not here. Now we are extracting username and password out of the request. Then you can also do a validation check like I did the other time. Check the data. If the data is actually a username, if the password match or the length or is a string, no number, any that just data validation. And also we now need to check if the data match what we have in our database, the record. That is, we need to instantiate the connection again to the database, query to select the user based on their username. So this data is expected to come as an array from the database. That's why we are using length, because length is part of the attributes in an array. By length, you can get a total number of value you have inside your array. Now, if the username does not exist in the database, that means that the data is invalid. The username must actually exist in the database for we to continue the rest of the operation, that is the password check. You need to check the username and as well check the password. Now, we are accepting plain text password from the user, but what we have saved in our database is encrypted text. So for us to be able to compare and contrast plain text and encrypted text, we need to use the bcrypt compare function. So which is expecting a plain text and encrypted text. So this encrypted text, we are selecting it from the database using this query. Now, if the password is invalid, the password did not match, that means the login is invalid. So that's what we are doing here. So if the two check pass, we now need to generate a token for the user. That is, for the rest of the protected API you need to access to, this token is what you need to gain access to all those API. So now, to generate the token, we are using a JWT token, JWT library for that. We installed it the way we installed bcrypt and MySQL the other time. We check the documentation, which I did earlier. We now need to follow the pattern for it. We are expecting to send a payload, that is the data we want to send to it, we want to encrypt. The data can either be a string or a buffer or an object. So that is what we are sending. We are sending an object that consists of the ID of the employee and the name of the employee. Then the key, that is the secret that we use, which is what we save. I explained the other time, the autogenerate alphanumeric value. Then the time, the expiry time when you want the token to last for. We want the token to last for 1 hour. We want the token to last for just 30 minutes. We want the token to last for just 2 minutes. You need to set it. Now we return the token to the user. So that token is what we're going to be using for the rest of the API that's protected. The same thing goes for the last API, that is, we want to retrieve the password and the salary of that user. Implement the auth check, just call a function and insert it. Make a connection to the database. Write the query to select the salary based on the ID. Now, I explained to us, we are extracting the ID of the currently logged in user from the data we save inside the auth check. We save it to the request when the validation check we're done with the authentication check middleware. These are the things we implemented. We validate the token, select the data from database, and save that data into the request because we might need the data elsewhere. And that's what we are doing here. That's what we are doing here. So this is an overview of the API that we developed in the system. Now we now need to address some of the issues you guys are facing. A lot of you are facing issue on how to set up MySQL, which is something we are going to do now. When you want to install SQL on your system, download on Google, download SQL. So SQL is what you need. SQL needs to be running on your system. That is, you need to be able to access it from your CMD command line. So the SQL needs to be installed so that database visualization tools like Workbench, Beekeeper, dbeaver can connect to it. Now, if you want to install it, all you need to do is just download it. Select the operating system you want. If you are running on Mac, go and select Mac. Now, this is for Windows. Install it. So when you install it, let me look into some of the articles how to set up MySQL on Windows. So you Google search it. So these are the things, the articles you can read to fix whatever issue you are facing. There are videos you can check out. A lot of articles. So we are going to go through this article one by one. If you can relate to it based on the issue you are facing. All right. So when you download the MSI version, which is the recommended one, you follow the installation. Here, this is very important. If you are running on a MySQL server, if you download the MySQL server, so now as a Windows person, if you are running on Windows, you need to check in your folder. You go to your window hard disk, see when you go to window, you will see the hard disk icon. Click on the hard disk icon, navigate to program files. When you go to program files, you need to locate another folder called MySQL. When you navigate the folder called MySQL, now look for MySQL again, MySQL server inside it. So now this is expected that you can locate this thing after you have been able to install MySQL successfully in your system. If you're unable to install it successfully in your system, the program file will not be on your system. So there is another file, program something. We always have two program file on Windows. We have program file and one other name, program something. So if it's not inside program files, you will find it in the second program file. So you read the documentation to fix the issue you're facing. If this article did not address the issue you're facing, you can check more that will properly something like this, a visual that actually explain how to install it. So when you download the MySQL installer, You follow all these steps, you install it. Yeah, you select all the supported tools you want to install. MySQL Server, Workbench. You can also install Workbench together when you are downloading it. So this you follow all all these steps, all the steps located there. Here, this is the way I'm looking for. Now, here you are setting up a password. That is the password you will use to connect to the account, to the MySQL. You are setting up user for it. So the information you set up here is what you are going to use inside your code when you want to connect to it. That information is what you will use, the user and the password. It's very, very important to understand what you type, because without that username and the password, you will not be able to connect to what you install. If you are getting invalid credentials, you need to uninstall your MySQL and reinstall it back, and pay attention to the name, both the password and username you install and you set. All right. So here you are going to select, I think, the location. Just follow the step. I think this is detailed enough. Can you see that? Can you see this? So the information you typed the other time, you will still validate it. Root, password, you cannot check based on the thing you type. The installation is complete. Now you cannot launch a workbench. I believe it's very, very direct. So just Google search it. And we also have another article, Gigs for Gigs. Read it. It will guide you and direct you on how to properly install it. See, to choose the best version of what you can install. Can we see that? Picture representation, step by step, is available here. The picture representation. So we also have it on W3 School. Same thing, picture representation. All right. So what other issue are we facing? What other issue are we facing? Hello, are you guys there? All right. So I believe this will be the end of our class. In the absence of no question, do we have any other question? All right, all right. What's the question? What is the question? All right, you can always drop the rest of your question in the group. All right. Thank you very much. And it's been a long journey for us. We've been able to cover React and Node.js over the time, and I really wish everybody a successful tech career. Thank you, and have a nice night.